Today, we're going to be going over some don'ts when buying a house, and for most people, buying a house is one of their top financial goals, and many times it will be the single most expensive purchase many people make. And this is even more so true if you're buying a house somewhere that has high real estate prices. The thought of buying a house can seem very exciting for many people, and for the most part it is exciting, especially if you are a first-time home buyer. However, the actual process is not as easy as you might imagine. There will be times when you get excited because you come across that perfect house, then you could be disappointed the next day because you find out someone else got their offer accepted before you can make your offer. Then a couple of days later, you could find another house that you really like and you get your offer accepted, so you get excited again. But then you begin to second guess yourself because you feel you could have found a better house if you had just waited. The point is, buying a house is not so easy, and the process is filled with many different emotions, and the fact that when you are buying a house, everyone from your parents to your friends and other family members all seem to have their own opinions, that also doesn't make anything easier. However, the point of this video is for me as a licensed real estate agent to give you some tips that will help you make the home buying process easy and enjoyable for you. And if you're new here, my name is Edgar, and on this channel we talk about personal finance, investing, and business. So if that is something you want to learn about, consider subscribing. Now, the first don't when buying a house is don't start shopping without having a lender pre-qualification. This is something I see happening very often, and the reason why you must meet with a lender before you start shopping for houses is you need to know what you can afford, and this is important because you don't want to go spend time looking at houses that are not within your price range. But also, whenever you begin your house search by looking at houses that are more expensive than what you qualify for, you will compare the later houses to the more expensive houses you saw at first. For example, let's say there is a family who is looking to buy a house, but they begin their home buying process by going and looking at houses that are $600,000 because they think that's what they can afford. And when they like what they see, then they decide to meet with a lender and get pre-qualified. But when they meet with a lender, they are told they only qualify for $500,000. So not only did they waste time by looking at houses they cannot afford, but more likely than not, the $600,000 house will be nicer or in a better location than the $500,000 house. And what tends to happen is people will compare the $500,000 house to the $600,000 houses. And that is going to make the process of finding the right house more difficult than if you just met with the lender in the first place and knew exactly how much house you qualify for. Now yes, there are mortgage calculators that you can use to get an idea of how much the payments will be on a certain house. And then websites like Zillow will have a breakdown of the payment, but many times they're using outdated information or they're using numbers that don't apply to you. For example, if you were looking to buy this house, Zillow is saying that your monthly payment will be just over $4,100 per month. And you might be thinking that you can't afford that payment, but something you need to pay attention to is how they are calculating that number. So if we click where it says principal and interest, we can see that they are assuming you're putting a 20% down payment, and if you are, then that's fine. But if you're putting less money for the down payment, then the number they show is not how much your payment will be. And yes, you can adjust the number so it matches your down payment or anything else, but when you're getting qualified to buy a house, the lender doesn't just look at whether or not you can make the minimum payment. They want to see your employment history to make sure you will be able to continue making the payments. Then they want to see your credit history and credit score to make sure you are someone who pays their debts. And they also take a look at what other debts you have. So at the end of the day, the only way to know for sure how much house you qualify for is by meeting with a lender. The second don't when buying a house is you shouldn't buy more house than you need. This is something that I see very often when I'm working with home buyers, and I can't understand why many people want the biggest and nicest house. I mean, whenever you see someone who has a big house in a gated community with a golf course view and high-end finishes, many people automatically associate that with a person who has a lot of money and has been very successful. And it's for that reason that many people try to go for the most expensive house they can afford. However, what you should do is really think about what it is that you need in a house and then pick a house based on that. So if there is a family of 4 who's looking to buy a house, then most likely than not, they will only need a 3-bedroom house, the master bedroom for the parents, and then 1 bedroom for each kid. And maybe they can't justify getting a 4-bedroom house, so they can't have a guest bedroom or use a 4th bedroom as an office. But if they're looking at houses that are 5,000 square feet with 5 or 6 bedrooms, an office, a loft, and a separate guest house, then there's a 99% chance they're buying more house than they need. Now, if you are a billionaire like Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates, then you can buy a house of whatever size you want, but odds are you don't have billions of dollars to spend. So until you get to that point, you need to make sure you don't overspend when buying a house. Now, if at the time of buying your house it is just you and your spouse, but you plan on having kids, then obviously you would buy a house with that in mind. I mean, it would not make sense to buy a 1-bedroom condo only to sell it 2 years later because now there isn't enough space. However, if you are single and you don't plan on having kids anytime soon, then a 1-bedroom condo can be a great buy. The point is, you shouldn't buy more house than you need, even if the amount you qualify for is enough to get you a big house. Only buy a house that fits your needs. The next don't when buying a house is expecting that you will find that one house that fits every single one of your wants. At the end of the day, no house is 100% perfect, and if you are able to find a house that meets every single one of your wants, then it's probably going to cost more than you are qualified for, and even then I'm sure there will be something that you don't like. So instead of making the home buying process more complicated by trying to find a house that most likely does not exist or is not an option for you, you should find a house that meets your major criteria, and this will be things that you cannot easily change about a house, like the location, the lot size, or the size of the house. So if you need your house to be in a certain area because you want your kids to go to a specific school and you need a certain size house to fit all of your family, but at the same time you would like to find a house that has a modern kitchen and a completed basement, then your priority should be to find a house that is in the location you want and is the right size for you, because those are things you cannot easily change, whereas you can always remodel the kitchen to make it look how you would like, and you can complete the basement yourself. Also, something else I see many homebuyers do is they judge a house based on the decor of the house. For example, you might come across a house that is in the location you want, is the perfect size for you, and is within your price range, but the house is decorated with decor that you think is ugly, or the master bathroom has a mixed match of wallpaper and the rest of the house is painted with neon colors. What most people would do when they see a house like this is overlook the fact that the house is located where they want to be, that the house is the right size for them, and that the house is within the price limit, and only focus on what the house looks like on the surface. But the thing is, when you buy a house, you will not be buying any of the decor, so that shouldn't even matter. Plus, you can very easily remove wallpaper and paint the walls, and that is something that would not cost a lot of money. Also, the fact that the house is not perfect and has some flaws, you can use that to your advantage and try to get the seller to come down on the price. So whether we are talking about a house that does not meet 100% of your wants or a house that has some flaws, you should do your best to overcome that and focus on the major items that you cannot easily change. Now, the next homebuyer mistake is not considering all the expenses that are involved with buying and owning a house. When it comes to buying a house, the sales price is just the beginning, because there are many more expenses that you will have to cover when you first buy your house and throughout the time you own it. The first thing you will have when you first buy your house is the down payment, and this is not something that catches many people off guard, because most people know that there will be a down payment when you buy a house. But something that many people don't know is that when your down payment is less than 20%, you will have to pay for insurance, which will be added to your monthly payment, and this can range between 0.5% and 1% of the loan amount. So let's say you buy a house for $300,000 and your down payment is 10% or $30,000. That means your loan amount is going to be $270,000. And because your down payment was less than 20%, you will have to pay for insurance. And in this case, you will be paying anywhere between $110 and $225 per month. And depending on the type of loan you have, you could be stuck paying for this for many years, which is going to add up. Now, of course, the exact amount you pay for this insurance will depend on whether you got a conventional loan or an FHA loan, the amount of your down payment, and whether or not you plan to refinance at some point. But either way, if your down payment is less than 20%, you should factor in the cost of mortgage insurance. Now, the next expense you will have when buying a house are closing costs, and this will vary depending on where you are buying your house and the agreement you have with the sellers of the house. But so you have an idea of the different closing costs you could be paying for, there will be escrow fees, lawyer fees, application fees, appraisal fees, loan origination fees, home inspections, and much more. And as I said before, some of these expenses could be covered by the sellers, but many of these will have to be paid for by you. And a good rule of thumb is to expect that closing costs will be anywhere between 2 and 5% of the purchase price. The next expense you will have when buying a house is the cost of moving, doing repairs, or doing a renovation. And of course, the cost of these things will be different from person to person. For example, if you're buying a new construction house, then more likely than not, the house will be 100% move-in ready, so there will not be any repairs or renovations, and the only cost you will have is the cost of moving. And if you're able to get some friends or family to help you move, then the only expense you will have is the cost of food and drinks and some basic moving supplies. However, if you're moving across the country, then that can cost a few $100s. Or if you hire a moving company, then that can cost a few $1,000s. Then if you're buying a house that needs some repairs, then you could be spending a few $1,000s for things like new paint, new flooring, or new carpet. Or there's also the possibility that you bought a house that needs a complete remodel, and at that point you could be spending $20, $40, $50, or $100,000 on a renovation. So those are the one-time expenses you will have when buying a house. But now we can move on to the expenses that will continue throughout the time you own your house, and the first ongoing expense you should keep in mind is the cost of maintenance and repairs. And once again, how much you spend on maintenance and repairs will vary from person to person. But one factor that will impact how much this will cost you is where your house is located and when it was built. If you own a house where the weather is very cold or very hot, then you could have more wear and tear on the outside of your house when compared to a house that is located somewhere that doesn't have extreme cold or hot weather. Then if you're buying a new construction house, you will most likely not have any major repairs, and even if something does come up, more likely than not your house will be covered by a builder warranty. However, if you bought a house that was built in the 70s, 80s, or even 90s, then that's when you will begin to see expensive repairs come up. For example, your house could need a new roof, and depending on the size of your house, this can cost anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 or even more. Then you also have things like the water heater, AC, furnace, plumbing, electrical, and a few other things. And if the house you bought has been well maintained, then some of these things might never be an issue. But an expense you will always have when you own a house, whether you bought a new construction house or a house that is 40 years old, is the cost of maintenance. And this includes things like pest control, yard maintenance, replacing light bulbs, or painting a room. And a good rule of thumb when it comes to estimating how much you will spend on repairs and maintenance is to budget at least 1% of the home value. So if you bought a $300,000 house, then you should expect repairs and maintenance to be around $3,000 per year. Now that does not mean you will be spending $3,000 every year on maintenance and repairs, but instead what might happen is you could spend a few $100s every year fixing minor things as they come up and doing your basic maintenance. But then one year something major in your house breaks, and that's when you could be spending several $1,000s on repairs. And if you average that out, then that's how you get the 1% annually. However, like I said before, how much you spend on insurance, closing costs, repairs, and maintenance will be different for everyone, but you should consider these costs before you commit to buying a house. So with that being said, these are some common homebuyer mistakes that you should avoid, and by keeping these in mind, it will make the home buying process more enjoyable. And if you enjoyed watching or you found this information helpful, it would really help if you like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.